In this video, we will show you how to replace your rear brake caliper on this Kia Forte Koup. This will be located behind your rear wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Safely raise and support the rear of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. To remove your wheel, we're going to remove all 5 of our 21mm lug nuts and then the wheel. Now that we have the wheel off, we have a clear view of our brake caliper. Before we start removing this, it's always a good idea to make sure that you remove the bleeder screw cover. We'll give that a close inspection. Once you've done that, continue on to loosening your 10mm headed bleeder screw. Wait to see a tiny bit of fluid coming out of here. It's a good idea to have a collection receptacle handy. Once you do have some fluid making its way out, make your way up inside the passenger compartment. Depress the brake pedal with something and hold it to the floor. You can use a pry bar if necessary, in between the seat and that brake pedal. Once you have that held in place, all the way down to the floor, make your way back out here and we'll close the bleeder screw. Got our collection receptacle handy. We got plenty of fluid making its way out of here. Let's put this right on there. Now I'll make my way up into the passenger compartment. Once again, we're waiting to watch fluid make its way out of here. I'm going to depress that brake pedal all the way to the floor and hold it there. Okay, let's get back down here. Close this off. Use some parts cleaner in this area. With that closed, let's make our way along the back side of the caliper to where the flex hose connects on. We're going to loosen the banjo bolt and then lightly snug it, just enough that it's not leaking. Use a 12mm on this. Okay. Continue on to your 2 14mm caliper slider mounting bolts. Once you have one of them out of there, go ahead and start it back in, a couple threads, and then fully remove the second. Use our 14mm on these. Now we can move the caliper around. Let's make our way back to that banjo bolt. We'll fully remove this. Keep in mind, fluid will make its way out. Have a collection receptacle under this area. When removing your banjo bolt, you should find that you have 2 gaskets. Typically, you're going to have one in between the bolt head and the flex hose, and you'll have a second one in between the flex hose and the caliper. Let's just confirm that that flex hose is still in good reusable condition. If it looks like it's rotted or damaged on any of the mounting points, either side essentially, you want to go ahead and replace that. This one looks fine. We'll set it aside. Let's get that other one off of there. Go ahead and remove that caliper. We'll drain this into our collection receptacle. Now we'll focus on removing the brake pads from the brake caliper bracket. As you remove them, you want to give them a close inspection. Pay attention to the friction material. If it looks like it's worn low or at an angle, it's a good idea to replace your brake pads. Now we can start removing the caliper bracket from the area. This is held in place with 2 14mm headed mounting bolts. What you're going to find is the upper mounting bolt is a little bit longer than the lower one. There's an extra bracket here. Start that back in a couple threads. Remove your caliper bracket. Let's do a little side-by-side look at those two bolts. As you can see, the upper one is just a little bit longer than the lower. Let's prepare our brand new caliper for installation. Looking along the backside, we can remove our banjo bolt and our two brand new gaskets. You never want to reuse old gaskets when installing your brake flex hose. There's one, two, just set those on there temporarily. Continuing on, we're going to separate the caliper from the bracket. Should have two 14mm headed mounting bolts holding this in place. Now we can separate this. We'll set this portion aside temporarily. We'll make our way back to it. Focusing on the bracket, we're going to remove each of our two caliper slider pins so we can lubricate this area. To do this, grab hold of the pin, remove it from the boot. A quick inspection, we'll go ahead and clean this up. That's just assembly lube. We'll re-lubricate it with high temperature caliper lubricant. When lubricating these, you want to lubricate the entire smooth shafted area all the way down to the tip. But also, make your way to the far end where my gloved fingers are. You can see there's a small groove for the boot to sit. Make sure you lubricate in that area as well. As we're sliding this in, we're going to squeeze any air out of the boot as possible. Go ahead and give this a couple twists just to work in that grease. Same process for the other slider pin. When removing your slider pins, you're going to find that one of the slider pins has a vibration dampener. When reinstalling these, you need to make sure it's in the same port. Once again, lubricate the entire shaft, down to the tip, and all the way up closest to my gloved fingers there. Press it in, squeeze the air, give it a couple twists. Next, we need to have our two brand new caliper tins ready. We're going to be lubricating the caliper where those tins go. Once again, we're using that high temperature caliper lubricant, and we only need a tiny bit on each of these areas. Now it's time for those tins. We'll press them right on. Listen for a click, double check to make sure they're secured in place as you continue. Now we can pause on the bracket. We'll set that aside. Make our way back to the caliper portion here. This is the muzzle portion. Your caliper piston makes its way inside this area, but where we're going to be focusing is on the outer aspect of the caliper piston. We're going to apply a thin amount of high temperature lubricant here and along the backside of each of the two forward caliper ears. This will help with vibration dampening and noise reduction overall. Let's get over to the vehicle. Put this bracket in place. As you remember for those two bolts, the upper bolt is the longer of the two. Don't mix them up. Shorter one down here. Once you have both of them started, snug them up and then torque those to 50 foot-pounds. Now it's time for our brake pads. When installing the brake pads, you want to ensure you have them in the proper orientation. Your inner brake pad should have the wear indicator, and that wear indicator needs to be facing upward. As you install the brake pads, you want to make sure that they can move around. If you had to use a hammer to try to drive them in there, typically something's not cleaned properly. Nice. Continue on to the brake caliper here. We're going to slide this in and over the brake pads and your caliper slider pins. Once you do have it in place, continue on with your 14mm caliper slider bolts. With those started in, snug them up and torque those to 20 foot-pounds. The next thing we'll do is pay attention to our flex hose. You want to pay attention on each side here where those gaskets would have sat. Ensure that there is no gasket. Continuing from there, it's time for our brand new banjo bolt. We're going to take one of our new gaskets and slide it right on there. Now with that in place, we'll take the banjo bolt with the gasket and slide it through the flex hose. After you have that slid through the flex hose, take your other gasket and put it on the opposite side of the flex hose. Now we have one on each side of that flex hose. At this point, we'll be taking this and starting it into the caliper by hand. Once you have it started in, go ahead and snug it up. The torque for this is 20 foot-pounds as well. Double check to make sure your flex hose is completely secured. Just remove our bleeder boot from the area. Now let's pause here, make our way up into the engine compartment, remove the pressure from on that brake pedal. We'll make our way back down here so we can start gravity bleeding our braking system. Just gonna open up that bleeder screw. We'll wait to see a steady trickle of fluid coming out of here, and then we can start our brake bleed. Now to bleed the brakes, it's going to be easiest having a second person. We're going to have that second person up inside the passenger compartment. They're going to pump up the brake pedal approximately 3 to 5 times. Hold it on the last time, let me know. I'm going to open up the bleeder screw, and we'll be watching for air and fluid making its way out. We want to make sure we have only clean fluid making its way out, no dirty fluid, and definitely no air. Go ahead and pump up that brake pedal, please. Go ahead and pump. That back on there. Go ahead and pump. At this point, we've finished bleeding the rear brake caliper. You can go ahead and reinstall your cap and clean up your mess. Start on all 5 of your 21mm lug nuts. Bottom them out. We'll get the wheels safely back down on the ground, and we can torque these to 80 foot-pounds. Now with the wheels safely on the ground, we'll torque these in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Once you've completed that, make your way back up under the hood. Let's make our way back up under the hood. We're going to check that brake fluid level. If it looks like it's low, go ahead and add some. Okay, friend, the last thing you want to do is go ahead and pump up that brake pedal till it's nice and firm one last time, check for leaks, take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.